Atlantic Records, Lupe Fiasco, a rocky business relationship, and the power of the people. It's probably well known that Lupe has had issues with his former record label, Atlantic Records, but here I'm going to be breaking it down in a bit more detail as well as the events leading up to his signing to the label in the first place. Chicago's own Lupe Fiasco was considered one of the greatest rappers ever by those that know his music. Unfortunately, due to various reasons, whether you attribute it to declining attention spans, a lack of marketability in the music, or the powers that be trying to keep us down, the most lyrical of rappers often don't achieve a high level of success commercially. Then again, maybe they're just trying to avoid all the nonsense that the music business can come with, like the stuff that Lupe went through. Let's get into it. Lupe was born in Chicago and initially didn't like rap music due to the vulgar lyrics the genre was known for, but upon hearing Nas' second album, It Was Written, became more interested in rapping. He started off making mixtapes in high school with fellow student Bishop G, before going solo and then joining the group The Pack with rappers Navi, Butcher B, and D-Lo, which had a focus on gangster rap, which was what Lupe was essentially turned off by rap to begin with, and he realized that he wanted to do something different with his music. The group was signed to Epic Records, but eventually dropped from the label, and Lupe went back to being a solo artist. I guess you could say this was also the beginning of his record label shuffles. He met Charles Patton, aka Chili, became his business partner, and together they started the independent record label, First and 15th, around 2001. Around this time, Lupe was also signed to Arista Records by then president and CEO L.A. Reid. In 2003, Chili and several others were arrested due to drug-related charges, and Lupe was fortunately acquitted, but left without his friend and business partner. Lupe stayed with Arista, working on mixtapes and his debut album, as well as meeting various people in the industry and featuring on songs occasionally for other artists on the label, until early in 2004 when, due to Sony and BMG merging, L.A. Reid was fired, which then resulted in Lupe being dropped from the label. Around this time, Lupe's debut album was essentially completed, but was not able to be released given the situation. Fortunately, Jay-Z, who had seen Lupe as a talented young rapper that reminded him of himself, had stepped in to help out. Apparently, Chili is the one who introduced Jay to L.A. Reid, and after the whole situation that happened at Rockefeller Records, Jay was poised to become the president at Atlantic Records and wanted Lupe to sign to the label. They were in need of money as Chili's bank accounts were frozen due to the criminal case, so they went with Atlantic Records and used the advance for Chili's bond. Jay-Z had ultimately decided not to go with Atlantic Records, however, as L.A. Reid, who had recently become the chairman of the Island Def Jam group, offered Jay-Z the position of president at Def Jam, which he accepted. This is where the Lupe Fiasco Atlantic Records beef would come into play and be a major factor in him being probably one of the biggest what-if artists in hip-hop. He was now essentially stuck on a major record label without the people he even signed there to begin with. Fortunately, however, Jay-Z still would remain the executive producer for Lupe's debut album, Food and Liquor. According to an interview with Chili by former host of Hip Hop DX's The Breakdown, Justin Hunt, they took the album to Atlantic Records, and the chairman of the label at the time, Craig Cowman, didn't like the album at all, so Chili refinanced his own house in order to get the money needed to get Kick Push on the radio, which became Lupe's breakout single. In that same interview, he also explained why Jay-Z decided to go with Def Jam and that he held no ill will towards him for it. Prior to Kick Push, Lupe was heard on Kanye West's single Touch the Sky from Late Registration, released in 2005, which brought him to the attention of many Kanye fans and a mainstream audience. Also in 2005, he dropped the first of his well-known mixtape series, Fahrenheit, First and 15th, The Truth Is Among Us. At this time, Kick Push was getting played on the radio heavily, and according to a Lupe Fiasco interview on Sway in the Morning, he states that Craig told the radio stations to stop playing Kick Push. Now, why would any record executive be upset that one of the artists signed to the label is getting radio play? Well, you could say that it's because Atlantic had nothing to do with the song at all, since as Chili said, he used his own money to get the record on radio, and the song was made before they signed to the label to begin with. It was even produced by frequent collaborator and in-house producer of First and 15th, Soundtrack. One day while on Instagram Live speaking to Joe Budden, he explained exactly what happened with that situation. Craig Cowman wanted the slowdown of Kick Push in order to have time to catch up, and what he did next is probably one of the most slimy tactics I've heard from a record label. According to Lupe, they found out who owned a song that was sampled in Kick Push and flew down to the Philippines in order to purchase the entire song from her. This would give Atlantic Records part ownership in Kick Push now. He stated that he has similar stories for other hit songs of his like Superstar, The Show Goes On, and Battle Scars. From a business perspective, this is what you'd probably call a power move, and that's understandable. But from the perspective of an artist, it's scandalous to say the least, and would be the start of a pretty sour relationship between Lupe and Atlantic Records.
Okay, well that exists in the corporate world too, though.
From an equity position, he didn't have any publishing, he didn't have any royalty rights, he didn't bring the producer, he didn't have anything to write it, he had nothing to do with it. You know what they did?
What?
They flew down to the Philippines to find the woman who we sampled the record from and bought the entire record from her. So they actually own the song that Kick Push is sampled from. That's what they did.
In 2006, months before the album was released, it was leaked online, which caused the album to be shelved, and due to the leak and things like sample clearance issues, several new songs had to be recorded. So the album we did get was significantly different than the initial album. More record label hijinks were involved with this album, unfortunately, as in January 2022, Lupe tweeted in response to someone talking about the song Daydreamin', which is the third single from Food and Liquor, saying that he doesn't receive any revenue from the song. He also responded to another person's tweet and stated that the song was forced on the album by Craig Cowman, who also is credited as the sole producer for the album. But in 10 Years Later, which is an over an hour long audio recording of Lupe detailing the process of making Food and Liquor for the 10th anniversary, he stated that Craig Cowman produced Daydreamin', but not really, as he was having people coming in and adding things to the song, obviously making him not the sole producer at all, as he is listed on the album credits. Maybe that's the opposite approach to artists like Ye, who is known to credit several people, even if they've contributed small parts to the song's production process. It once again speaks to the mindset of some of these record label executives and their focus on only making hits in order to make money and not caring about artistic integrity, but only the ability to cash out. They don't call it the music business for no reason. On that same IG Live conversation, they also discussed 360 deals, which for those that don't know, are basically deals where the record label is involved in every source of income you have, hence the 360 in the title. They take a certain percent of your tour revenue, merchandise revenue, and so on. In return, they're more likely to support your career with things like marketing and promotion. Lupe said that Craig Cowman approached him about a 360 deal while he was in bed in his hotel room with pneumonia.
I was there with niggas thought my 360 shit. They gave me my 360 deal when I was in recovery for pneumonia. Craig Cowman I'm laying in a fucking hotel room with a bottle of Promethazine and some Tylenol 3, and this nigga sitting on the side of the bed with a fucking look like a menu from Denny's with all the bill points on it with my picture on that shit.
Once again, another blatant disregard of human decency. Business is business though, right? This happened sometime after the release of his second album, The Cool, and before the release of his third album, Lasers. In 2008, Lupe announced his plans to release a trilogy of albums titled Loop END, the END meaning everywhere, nowhere, and down here. But the record label blocked that idea. Then in 2010, Lupe announced that the album was complete and awaiting a release date from Atlantic. The label, however, would not release the album without having songs that they felt would be a commercial success, aka hit singles. Lupe refused this, and the album continued to not get a release date. This is perhaps where the situation between Lupe and the label developed even worse. But before I continue, hit those like and subscribe buttons, and remember to click that join button if you want to become a channel member and support the channel even further. Now back to Lupe. Considering he released his debut album in 2006 and his sophomore album in 2007, over 2 years going by and not even getting a release date for his next album would understandably seem to be a bit odd. A fan started a petition online demanding the release of the album, and it quickly garnered thousands of signatures and was covered on several websites. Lasers was then finally given a release date and came out in March 2011. However, a number of fans still protested outside the Atlantic Records office in New York in October of 2010, and Lupe showed up as well to give a speech. This is where the famous clip of record executive Lyor Cohen standing outside holding a boombox playing Lupe Fiasco music comes from. Due to record label interference, Lupe has stated that he essentially hates this album, largely due to them forcing most of the songs on there, like The Show Goes On and Never Forget You. In an interview with Complex magazine, Lupe had this to say about the album. "One thing I try to stress about this project is I love and hate this album. I listen to it and I like some of the songs. But when I think about what it took to actually get the record together and everything that I went through on this record, which is something I can't separate, I hate this album. A lot of the songs that are on the album, I'm kinda neutral to. Not that I don't like them or that I hate them, it's just I know the process that went behind it. I know the sneaky business deal that went down behind this song, or the artist or singer or songwriter who wrote this hook and didn't want to give me this song in the first place. So when I have that kind of knowledge behind it, I'm just kind of neutral to it, like another day, another dollar. As opposed to something like The Cool, which is more of my own blood, sweat, and tears, and my own control. With this record, I'm a little bit more neutral as to the love for the record." He goes on to mention that they were even in the process of trying to go to a different label. So you could say that this would be the peak of the bad blood between Lupe and Atlantic. However, the friction still continued, contractual obligations and all. His frustration with the record label leaks out on the album, like on the hit single The Show Goes On the first verse with lines like, "They treat you like a slave, put chains all on your soul and put whips up on your back. They be lying through their teeth, hope you slip up on your path. I don't switch up, I just laugh, put my kicks up on their desk." Which is a reference to Atlantic Records and their demands of him. He's also mentioned multiple times how depressed and suicidal he felt during the whole Lasers fiasco, no pun intended. On the song Beautiful Lasers, he mentioned struggling with suicidal thoughts with lines like, "Gun on my table telling me to come on, telling me to put them inside my hand, then put it up right next to my dome." It's one of the darker songs on the album, but also one of the most honest and one of my personal favorites. In an interview with the Chicago Tribune, Lupe Fiasco had this to say when asked about his suicidal thoughts. "The idea of suicide was real. The danger came as I started to catch myself rationalizing it. For 6-7 months, I was questioning my faith and thinking about how would this affect my mom, my family. I only got out of it by talking freely to a few people about it. They let me take myself out of circulation for a while. It was a secret set of friends. A couple people in particular who let me stow away and allowed me to be cut off from the universe for a while." Think about that. If it wasn't for some good friends, a young man could have taken his own life, largely due to the struggles of what essentially comes down to a business decision. People that know me know that Lupe Fiasco is one of my favorite rappers ever. I'm glad he's still here and making music. While he was working on Lasers, he also recorded his fourth album, Food and Liquor 2, the Great American Rap Album Part 1. Which released in 2012 and was supposed to be a double disc album, but was once again blocked by Atlantic Records. You notice how this seems to be a pattern? I'm sure these things happen to other artists too, but Lupe has been one of the most vocal ones in hip hop to really speak on the record label industry. The album was then supposed to be getting a part 2, but Lupe canceled the idea and announced a new album instead later on. When it came time for his 5th album, Tattoo on Youth, to get a release date, Atlantic Records refused to release it without a radio-friendly song, so it was essentially shelved. However, the hacker group Anonymous stepped in and threatened Atlantic Records with a good old hacking if they would not give a release date for the album, which they did later that day. This once again showed that Atlantic Records truly thought that they could bully all of their artists into their formulaic hit factory process without repercussions. If Atlantic Records truly didn't give a release date for the album, would Anonymous have proceeded to digitally attack the label? Only they know for sure, but it sure makes for a good story. On the song Imagine, from his 7th album, Drogas Wave, he talks about some of these issues I mentioned previously, and I'd like to quote the man himself. So Atlantic Ocean motion might make you sound funny, bet you didn't know the advance went straight to bail money. That's right, to free Chili Chill and to do it all again, I would sign another deal. He goes on in the verse to also mention things like his first album being leaked, as well as Craig Cowman and the 360 deal. Now, in case anyone is thinking that Lupe just hates everyone at Atlantic Records, in that same IG conversation with Joe Budden, he does state that he has no problems with most of the people that work there, and that his issue is with 3 executives in particular. Those, of course, being the previously mentioned Craig Cowman, as well as Mike Kaiser and Mike Karen, who both have held positions at Atlantic Records for several years as well.
They don't give a fuck about us as a people.
Now you're straying into territory where it's like, again, that's not the case for the USC. When I say Atlantic Records, I say Craig Cowman, Mike Karen, Mike Kaiser. I don't say the whole fucking building. When it's time to like really break it down and get into the nitty gritty of the conversation, who did what, as well as Leo Cohn. But I'm not throwing the whole fucking building under the bus. My picture's still up there on the wall.
After the release of Tetsuo and Youth, Lupe's contract with Atlantic was almost up. In 2017, he released the album Drogas Light, which many thought was an independent album, as it is listed as a release by First and 15th and 30 Tigers, which is a company that is marketing and distribution for independent artists. However, during one of his shows around this time, he made an announcement that Drogas Light is officially his first independent album, but it was basically 1 foot in and 1 foot out, as the label still got paid from it. But the album was mainly a compilation of old songs. As around the time of Lasers, when he realized that things at the label were getting worse, he decided that he wouldn't ever give his heart to the music as long as he was signed to Atlantic. And since he's off the label now, that his next album, Drogas Wave, would be him giving it his all again. The story of Lupe and his rap career isn't over by any means. You could say that the Atlantic nightmare has ended, and more artistic freedom has been awakened. What do you think? Is Lupe really back to giving his all to the music again? Is this top-tier lyricist just now reaching his prime on his 7th album? Without the creative blocking and stress from Atlantic Records, what will he do moving forward? Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and stay tuned for more.